Okay, I guess I can sign myself in here. Oh, thank you for these big
What did I
maps.
do with mine? It's yours.
You signed in.
You're in. But I can't
Sign in.
You don't have a mouse?
No, wrong order.
I just
I know
was
something.
touch.
I know they've been working on a couple of these.
The Planning Commission meeting for
Yeah, you got a small
August
group tonight.
10th, 2015 is called to order.
You might as well just sit down there.
And the first thing I'll ask is, are there any public comments for items that are not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move forward. And this is a work session, so we'll be getting a presentation on the PC 15-190 Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan. And unless we have a consensus, we won't be taking public testimony tonight. We'll just be listening to the presentation, and then the next meeting, which is August 24th, we'll have public testimony and another presentation of this plan.
Mr. Kidwell, is there a member of the public that is here?
Hey, welcome, public.
So I guess I would say that since there's only one person here, we could probably, if there's something that comes up, I think we could be flexible considering the time.
If the public wishes to speak, they can let us know. So why don't we go ahead and take the staff report?
Okay, so my name's Martin Montalvo. I believe I've met most of you guys. I'm the operations manager for Oregon City Public Works. I'm also the project manager for the Myers Road Concept Plan. This is taking one of the projects that's currently listed in our transportation system plan and taking it from, I like to use analogies, so from 100,000 foot elevation to about a 50,000 foot elevation, with the goal of trying to set this project up for future funding through a couple mechanisms. We're looking at anything and everything that's possibly available, including federal, state, and local dollars to try and put this road into effect. So with us today, we've got 3 members of our project team, and then we've also got a couple members of our stakeholders. So there's Elizabeth, but I'm going to mess this up, Elizabeth Morass O'Hara. Close.
Morass O'Hara.
So I always get it wrong. John Replinger and Mike Hickey. They're with DA and Associates, so they were our prime for this project, and they're going to give you a brief presentation on the project. Bob Cochran with the community colleges here, and Bob's the Dean of Facilities. And they were one of the stakeholders that were part of the project management team. So our PMT consisted of the community college, the school district, Parks and Recreation, Oregon City Public Works, and then we had various outreach efforts with the property owners, which we have one of the property owners here in the room with us this evening. We also met with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, with the Caulfield Neighborhood Association, with the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association, and we've already presented to the Oregon City School District. So we're just going through our list of checkpoints. We wanted to touch in with you guys at a work session before we move on to a formal item.
I'm surprised that you didn't have a member of the Planning Commission on, and I'm not volunteering, but seems like that was a seat that should have been at the table.
I'll take that as an advisement for a future project. I didn't compose the team. It was handed to me, and I took the ball and ran with it. So with that, I'll hand it over.
We'd come out back there. It's the magic screen.
You can switch it right here.
Yeah, I'm switching over.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you need a pen?
Yeah.
This one actually
So, thank you, everybody, for being here to give us some input. what we wanted to do today is just give you a quick overview of the context, the outreach and collaboration that went into refining the transportation system plan projects. 64, an analysis of traffic and how that impacted the design, a quick explanation of the design and timeline, and then get your thoughts on the project. So I was going to start off by talking about the outreach and collaboration. John Replinger, our traffic engineer, would talk about the traffic issues, and then Mike Hickey, who is the project manager and design engineer, will talk to you about the design.
I thought he was already.
Sorry.
That's all right. You've never worked it before. I can totally understand that.
Can you work it from there? Just
Thanks. All right, you can go another one.
Just say beep like the old film.
Beep. Okay. So the Myers Road concept plan is really a refinement of the Transportation System Plan Project D46, which is extending Myers Road from Oregon 213 to High School Avenue. It would be a minor arterial, and that also includes a local street connection to the Clackamas Community College. And it affects 6 other transportation system plan projects and the way it refines what would happen in that area. The area is zoned campus, industrial, and enterprise zone, so it's really targeted for a lot of jobs and large lot redevelopment. Right now it's not developed, or most of it is undeveloped, and it's parallel to Glen Oak Road. Beep. So this is the general area. You can see the Myers Road extension is the dotted line, and then also you can see the dotted line that was the Loader Road extension as it was identified in the transportation system plan, unrefined, but basically a placeholder for that there will be a connection. There were multiple plans that we looked at, and recognizing that the TSP has multiple long-range planning projects, and then the regional transportation plan also identified connections. And at the same time, the Clackamas Community College is working on updating their master plan, and the Oregon City School District is working on a project to add a bus facility next to High School Avenue that would tie in with part of Myers Road. In addition, the parks are working on a park project that is just south of Myers Road, and I don't know if this is not quite working. So anyway,
I think you need the other one.
I think it's okay.
which page you need?
All right, that's fine. Yeah. So right here is the. There you
It works
go.
much better when you hit the on button.
Thank you.
Cool.
I just assumed it was on. All right. So anyway, that works a lot better. So,
It's rocket science.
so yeah, here's the parks project. This is the different alignments that were identified for connecting Myers Road. There we go. So, given that the need to coordinate with all the different projects moving forward, the school district is moving forward with the bus facility. CCC is working on their master plan update, and the desire to get some jobs and some development in the enterprise zone. There was a lot of coordination that needed to happen. We considered the needs of the regional plan. We considered the needs of Oregon City, and tried to make sure that we were leaving lots that were the right size for development. So given that, the Oregon City team put together a team that included major stakeholders. So Oregon City has Public Works, Parks, and Planning represented on the project management team. The Oregon City School District that was moving forward with the bus facility, Clackamas Community College, ODOT. They were all at the table as we were looking at designs that could work for the area. In addition, design was informed by neighborhood associations who were reached out to. The property owners were interviewed and talked to about what they cared about. So early on, there was an analysis of that. And TriMet was also consulted with. In addition, as I said, we took into account the zoning requirements and issues around natural resources. There's a natural resource zone that comes through that area, and so our team was looking to minimize impacts given that, and to also work for all the different planning projects that are going forward and make sure that we had an extension that would work for all the stakeholders, and particularly Oregon City, for moving forward. So with that, we undertook a transportation analysis to see what kind of design would meet those needs.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Again, John Replinger, and I've had the pleasure of being here numerous occasions before, mostly talking about development review. With this particular case, I was pulled into the project team from the beginning to do the transportation analysis, partly because of my familiarity with all of the development and some of the TSP activities from Oregon City and my general history. As Elizabeth said, this is a project that serves as this study was to refine the project that was specified in the transportation system plan. So we did, in fact, focus on the traffic operations for year 2035, which is the same year as the transportation system plan. I spent considerable work going back and reviewing the data relating to the transportation system plan, the amount of population, number of new dwelling units in the south part of Oregon City, the new employment in the south part of Oregon City, plus looking at regional growth from the that was all detailed in the TSP. Certainly, it is of no surprise to you, given your participation in current planning activities and the TSP, that there is expected to be considerable regional growth in the area, some of which is originating in the city, but there's a lot in coming into the community from south part of Clackamas County. One of the other key areas we considered in the transportation analysis was the Clackamas Community College and its expansion plans. I think a couple of you were on the commission back in 2008 when the Clackamas Community College adopted its master plan that called for 2 different phases of growth over the coming years. So we looked at that information about the anticipated growth and the needs from the community college. Another element we considered in considerable detail was the Beaver Creek concept area east of Beaver Creek Road. Part of that is destined to be an employment zone, part of it is a mixed use, part of it is residential. So again, we specifically looked at that because of the impact that would have on the Myers Road corridor. The final element that I wanted to talk about was the fact that a lot of this land adjacent to Myers Road on both the north side and south sides and along Loader Road to the north of the high school area and to the east of the community college is zoned for campus industrial. In looking at the transportation system plan, there was a fairly modest amount of growth anticipated in this part in these zones. What I did to ensure that we were looking at a worst case analysis was I looked at the carrying capacity of all of these large parcels, and essentially I assumed that all of them would be developed to a pretty intense degree. What that meant is I assumed in my analysis that there would be extra industrial development that is probably not likely given the overall regional growth of industrial employment in the area. So again, this is kind of a little bit of a worst case analysis where I considered more industrial development than is likely to occur on a regional basis, all being concentrated in here. By doing that level of analysis, I assured that that there was a little bit of extra room in there, and that our capacity analysis and operations analysis considered kind of a worst case.
Did you base that on the Metro 2040 growth projections, or it was?
Your TSP is based upon the Metro 2040 growth projections. I looked at it initially at that level and then intensified the amount of development because we have the potential. When you have industrial zoning category and the specification that you have in the code, you can have a pretty high level of intense development.
So just for the purposes of illustrating that, so you're talking about something that would be more intense in its development than red soils, but maybe something like Swan Island, maybe?
I'm sorry, Denise. Thank you for that. The clarification is I'm talking about something that is pretty intense, such as red soils, but more intense than would be projected by the metro level assumptions about where employment goes.
Mm-hmm.
So the total employment in that zone projected employment growth was maybe 500 employees within a particular zone. But your code is such that you could probably there could probably be 1,500 employees if every developer came in and every employer came in and said, I'm going to build something pretty intense, I'm going to be successful. If they all came in, we could have an extra 1,000 employees above what Metro and the TSP were based on.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's red soil. Red soils is on the lower end, in my opinion, and
Okay.
Rivergate or something like that is more on a higher end. So that gives me some idea of what you were thinking about.
Right. And of course, it depends entirely upon what type of industrial employment you get. With the campus industrial, we could have research and development sorts of activities, which have a higher level of trip generation than, say, does a heavy industrial employment. So, again, we will have a chance to revisit this in the individual traffic analyses that come in for individual parcels. But I'm pretty confident that my approach meant we were designing the appropriate road section. And that appropriate road section, look at that. Oh, did I go forward? Did I go backwards? Okay. The configuration of Iris Road, and you do have a diagram, I think, in your packet that shows this 3-lane section. Thank you, Denise. Have a 3-lane section, and as you recall, the principles in the TSP said, essentially, consider the minimum section that meets the needs. It's a little bit more complicated than that in terms of the code. I think it says consider the additional lanes when they're truly needed. And in fact, by doing this analysis in the manner in which I described to you, I'm confident that the 3-lane section is appropriate. This is a minor arterial road with a relatively restricted access in terms of the number of intersecting streets and the amount of direct access to it, with either a center turn lane or a median, depending upon the particular treatment needed in that section. But what it does show in the analysis is that we have one eastbound through lane, one westbound through lane, and either a median or a center turn lane. Furthermore, moving on the basis of or considering the standards that are in the TSP about it being a multimodal corridor, the proposal is for buffered bike lanes, which means they're the kind of standard full width 6-foot bike lanes with about a 2-foot or a 3-foot buffer. You probably have seen that in a number of places in Portland and in Milwaukee on Highway 99E. It's striped like that. And give you a few other locations if you desire. And sidewalks throughout, Parking on the south side, the team spent a considerable amount of time on that, and one of the reasons for parking on the south side was to serve the anticipated Parks property on the south, in the southwest quadrant of High School Avenue and Myers Road. Providing the on-street parking in that section helps provide access to the park. The design was really to emphasize safety. Parking not provided on the north side, partly in consideration of the amount of traffic and the activities at the school district bus maintenance facility, partly to keep the footprint of the road to a minimum to reserve the maximum amount of land available for industrial development in the corridor. The design speed was picked to be 30 miles per hour, which has multiple reasons for it. Helps to minimize the footprint and discourages some of the really high speeds that are possible. The other thing we analyzed, as you recall, there were several places where roundabouts were called for in the transportation system plan, including Myers Road and Loader Road. Analyzed the roundabout, analyzed four-way stop control, and found that the four-way stop control is plenty adequate for the amount of traffic, minimizes the footprint that would otherwise be needed for large trucks, which is important given the classification of this roadway, minor arterial and a local truck route. I have 5 individual slides in here about each of the intersections. Oh, there's the drawing. But you all saw it. Here's the cross section. I have individual slides on the 5 intersections. I'll just go through quickly and come back to them if needed. Myers Road, High School Avenue, and Loader Road would come in there at the corner with the high school, the maintenance facility, school bus maintenance facility in the park. It would operate fine as a 4-way stop control intersection.
John, do you want to? We referenced Loader Road in here, but I don't think we've explained that we've actually got a configuration for Loader Road that we were able to.
Okay. Well, in terms of going back here.
So you can see the green is the Loader Road.
And yes. Okay. So this is where Loader Road would come through. As Elizabeth explained earlier, the TSP showed Loader Road sort of coming through here. And for a variety of reasons, in terms of the amount of land use, the environmental impacts, and all, Loader Road was reoriented so this would be a connection. And what I was just explaining was this Myers Road, Loader, and High School Avenue would operate just fine as a 4-way stop. So there's been a fair amount of discussion with the high school and the school district about the configuration of Loader Road, and confident that it can be kind of squeezed through, taking advantage of the pavement that's out there and minimizing the impact on the athletic facilities, as well as minimizing the amount of land needed from the maintenance facility. But this would be Loader Road. The other intersections that analyzed quickly go to, well, I've got the map up here, the Myers Road and new community college access from the south. As Elizabeth mentioned, this is one that's called for in the TSP. It also was designated as a connection in the community college master plan from 2008. So we analyzed this, analyzed it as a T intersection with a stop sign on the community college access, free flow movement along Myers Road. Again, it's predicted to operate acceptably through year 2035. 213 and Malala and the main community college access is currently a signalized intersection, and it likewise was predicted to operate acceptably through 2035. Glen Oak and Caulfield Road, Glen Oak, Caulfield, and 213 is another intersection that was analyzed. The connection of Myers Road brings us with quite a good possibility for some changes in traffic patterns. Certainly, if any of you have spent any time looking at what's happening at the beginning of the school day or end of the school day, you see a lot of traffic using 213 to Glen Oak to the school. That could be rerouted and would be expected to use Myers Road. So there are some changes in terms of the traffic patterns, and the Myers Road would provide some relief from the current operations of 213, Glen Oak, and Caulfield. By 2035, there's a possibility that the performance of the intersection of 213 and Caulfield and Glen Oak could deteriorate to just below the applicable standards. Adding a right turn lane on that could help solve that problem, or at least meet the standards in year 2035. So that's kind of the end of the rundown on the individual 5 individual intersections, which were the focus of the traffic analysis for this project. Again, the conclusions are the 3-lane section is appropriate for Myers Road. 4-way stop control for Myers High School and Loader is going to function quite acceptably. A T intersection where Myers Road provides access to the community college on the south side. We'll work with stop signs on that community college approach. There is an additional northbound lane that will be needed on Oregon 213 at Myers Road. I mentioned there's a lot of growth in terms of regional traffic. We currently have 2 lanes southbound on 213 at that location. That helps us a lot during the evening peak hour. We kind of need the additional northbound lane to help us with the AM peak hour by 2035. Eventually, we will need. Now we have planned for 3 lanes on the new section of Myers Road, the westbound Myers Road at Highway 213, be separate left turn, through, and right turn lanes. And that's going to help us with traffic operations there.
Do you have a slide on that?
That's one of the handouts that you have. It's page 1 on this stapled handout.
With 213 and Myers, with the new, we don't have a.
Oh, there's no slide. Okay.
So 213 and Myers, we have 3 lanes westbound. Is our proposal right from the beginning. 3 lanes westbound, 1 lane eastbound. Currently, with the T intersection, that eastbound section of Myers Road has 2 lanes. It has a left turn lane and a right turn lane. Eventually, that will operate okay for a while, but eventually we'll need a left turn, a through lane, and a right turn lane. I think it will be appropriate when development occurs on that southwest quadrant of the intersection to require that they dedicate enough right-of-way, or actually put in the right turn lane for that approach. That'll help the operations of the intersection and reduce the queuing a lot on that eastbound approach from Myers Road. With those improvements, that is the additional lane on 213 northbound, the reconfiguring, the adding another through lane on the eastbound approach at Myers and 213, and designing the road as we have shown here, we expect adequate operations through year 2035. So That's kind of the analysis of the transportation and the impacts that has on our design. So, and I'll certainly be glad to come back to any of that as you desire. I think time for Mike to step up and go through a little bit more here.
John, you're not Mike Hickey, Dave Davis and Associates.
For Myers Road Extension, I'll go ahead and flip to the next slide. Is that forward? So there's quite a few pedestrians possibly using this facility right next to the high school and Clackamas Community College. So we took a real strong look at how the pedestrians are going to move through the area. We provided both sidewalks throughout the entire length of the project on both sides, as well as reconnecting the Clackamas Community College path and running that along parallel at the west end of the project. And so that gives pedestrians or bicyclists, some options, maybe how to get through the corridor. Use the sidewalks as normal, or possibly go up onto the campus and off track. We originally looked at providing a path the full length of the project, and because of some practical and safety considerations with the way the bus facility is and access in and out of that, we determined it would probably be safer to have the separated path kind of away from Myers Road, and that way there wouldn't be a conflict with buses coming in and out and the pedestrians on the facility. So as part of that, we also looked at a lower design speed. Normally we would have a little bit higher design speed for this type of a facility, but because of the close proximity of the high school, we did use a 30-mile-an-hour design speed. That was part of our project management team decision process. And that's kind of, I guess in a nutshell, a couple of key drivers that got us to this point. You'll see here is just an overview of the blue lines being the path where we ended up with the preferred alignment after looking at several different alignments that, as Elizabeth mentioned, minimize environmental impacts, maximize the development potential, and provided a safe corridor. You can see the green areas, the natural resource areas are quite large out there, and because of concerns for that, we did send a biologist out on site with permission to the property owners. They allowed us to get on their property and look around and see what we actually have out there with qualified people on the ground, and we mapped that area and considered that in our development, try to avoid the natural resources as much as possible. So we talked a little bit about how this plan affects the other transportation system plan projects in the area. Loader Road Extension, this got us to a decision on the Loader Road Extension, having this project kind of push that along, and with the high school doing their development, they were conditioned to use High School Lane or High School Avenue as part of the Loader Road connection and for the future. John alluded to that a bit. There's some parking along the side of High School Avenue there that will be part of the roadway for Loader Road when that does come through, and so there'll be some additional work on that to finalize the configuration of that roadway. And John mentioned the roundabouts. We looked at roundabouts for a number of reasons. They're desirable from some points of view, such as traffic calming. We did look at what would happen if we had a roundabout somewhere in the connection with community college or some other location, also at High School Avenue. We didn't see enough benefit from that. They'd be fairly large by the time you configure them so that truck traffic can get through. Lose some of their desired effect on traffic calming and slowing down traffic, as well as taking up quite a bit of room as far as using up developable property for the roadway work. This slide shows how we address some of the other transportation system plans. Provides sidewalk infill, shared use path, and safety improvement at OR 213. So with this, if you look at your more detailed handouts here, we show how the crosswalks would be configured as part of this project. We did talk with ODOT along on Highway 213 about when they plan on adding sidewalks to fill that in, and they don't have plans to add sidewalks until there's another major improvement that goes through. So this Myers Road does connect to the existing path that's on the community college property, so it provides a place for pedestrians to go in that direction. But to the south, there's no sidewalk facilities planned down to like Glen Oak Road, and that would be again in the future. We do provide the lane going through to the north, but not sidewalks. So there'll be an additional crossing along the south side of the intersection, but it wouldn't proceed to the south on the east side of Highway 213.
Before you go further on that last slide down there, D77, I think it was. Isn't there already a left-hand turn lane at the intersection of 213 and Malone Avenue?
Yes. This would change it a little bit. So that.
Because it said adds.
Yeah, that's part of the transportation system plan, but is my understanding, but not part of this project to add another lane.
I turned there just today.
Yeah.
I
was
suspect that
imaginary.
it's possible that was a typo in the TSP and was really referring to as a left turn lane at Myers Road.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Did you say that there were some, I don't see in the crosswalk configuration.
Okay.
You were saying there was somewhere, are they on a slide or?
Yeah, it might be on your detailed plan there. It's the aerial.
No, those are sidewalks. He said crosswalks.
The crosswalks are here.
Crosswalks, right.
So
Yeah.
if you
You'll
see
see the black stripes there.
the
for
color one?
Crosswalks.
where we have the alignment
Oh,
of the
okay.
roads.
When you said detail, I thought you meant like a cross-section
Oh, yeah, sorry.
showing how the sidewalks, the crosswalks were going to be configured, not that they are just,
You'll see just a
These-
layout of what the
Okay.
crosswalks are interpreted to be like.
okay.
Again, the detail could change when we come down from 50,000 feet. Is it question time?
Yeah, I think it's question time. This is
Question
my,
time.
my last slide here. So we're just saying, the first section will be built. Will
We
be
have
the,
to, don't we have to get, there,
Oh,
here's
there we
the
go.
question
You skipped
slide.
ahead.
Go back to the last one.
You jumped ahead.
Yeah, don't get to the question, yeah.
Yeah, so the last sentence says pursuing, so one of the grants I think that would be, maybe we should be looking at is, we've got a lot of wetlands there, and who knows what state agencies have in terms of wetland restoration grants or funding. So that ought to be, I would think that would be part. I know it is sort of inclusive, but throw that in there. If we can get money to do some restoration and make this a demonstration transportation project with wetlands restoration as opposed to wetlands mitigation, just think of all the awards we're going to get.
Put it in a positive light.
There you go. That's what I'm saying.
Sweet. So now go to the slide for
Now
questions.
Now then we can skip ahead.
Yes.
Finally.
Since Paul jumped to the
Don't you have to do the
questions.
thoughts part first?
Here are our thoughts.
I got a little excited, I guess. 5-foot sidewalks all the way throughout the roadway. It's a major arterial.
That's yes.
And that's bigger. That's smaller than what we have in our subdivisions, which are 6 foot.
Yeah, that was we use that to minimize the footprint. That's to try to narrow the right of way.
And will
It
there
is-
be any trees at all, or is this just going to be a big long drainage
Or
swale?
in the middle, but yeah, there needs to be trees along the whole.
It would be similar to the existing section of Myers Road where we have
Yeah,
trees in the
but it's
median and then we have the
But that's
swales and
swales.
trees along the
And
outside.
would the median strip be continuous, or would there be
Yes.
cement median or planted median, or I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on some on the exhibits
Well,
there.
I mean, I'd want to see a robustly planted median, because this is going to be a really wide, long roadway that's going to be used, hopefully by multimodal people. And to me, it looks like it's a roadway that does need to service campus industrial, and I get that. But I think it also needs to really speak to pedestrians a little bit more than it does, with wider sidewalks, more trees and shrubs in the median and in the swales.
I think that, Paul, in part in response to that, if you do have large-scale campus industrial with large developments or industrial subdivisions that focus the traffic in a few locations, that you could have a lot of planted medians with specific turn lane gaps in them. I think that would be everyone's desire in terms of the way we'd like to see it develop. And it's going to depend really, I suppose, on how people come forward with their development plans. And I mean, large scale, these are in several cases 10 to 20 acre parcels under single ownership, which does provide for a really good opportunity for some large-scale developments. And I think that would help foster the kind of design plan or concept that you see for the corridor.
So before you go off the cross-section, so Martin,
Mm-hmm.
are we looking at people chipping in for this? We're not looking at people to do incremental improvements along here, because I'm assuming we want it to be
One holistic project.
exactly.
That's our preferred approach.
Yeah, I don't think doing
In
it,
terms of how we get there,
yeah, that has to be
yeah.
determined.
But one of the reasons we did an outreach with the property owners, and when I mentioned Mr. Saunders is here as one of the property owners, part of the public record, is to get their input and see where we could make design changes that makes this project palatable to everyone, both the city, the partner agencies, and the property owners. We actually made some concessions and some changes to the final design. Granted, what everyone wanted, we had to try and get to a happy median, so we did make some design changes based on input from the property owners. So, Paul, one thing that you had brought up was the buffer strip that we have, the vegetated buffer strip between the sidewalk and the finished
Swale,
curb.
yeah.
So that was added in there as part of our new stormwater standards, which they're going into effect in 12 days. And right now, the depiction in this schematic is just a swale that's supposed to be vegetated,
Right.
with the thought of it being a rain garden. So we have a sizing tool which we use with our new stormwater standards that allows us to calculate the square footage of impervious area, take into consideration soil permeability, a bunch of other factors, and then it lets you get a general rough estimate of how much retention you would need based on your treatment system. And Mike, you ran our sizing tool against the total impervious area that we were proposing, and
Yeah, I don't know the results of that right
Okay.
off. But yeah, we had the soils types there, and it's adequate.
Yeah.
I know that much.
so that's there to provide us the stormwater retention, so we don't have to go into the property owner's properties and start saying we need acreage for a retention pond or something else. The designs that we have in our stormwater manual allow us to do various different types of species in the retention system. Whether we can go to large trees, that would be difficult, but we could get some nice planting along in there that'll give us the water quality treatment and the aesthetic treatment that we're looking for. The median might be a more fruitful place for us to look at for some larger sized trees.
Well, again, before we go off the cross sections, I have a couple of things too before, and then if you're going on to something else, I just figured just do cross section. So I really like the center median that we have on McLaughlin Boulevard. I wish, however, that the vegetation would grow a little faster, because what I want to see on this road, and this is just me, the vegetation to give the appearance to people as they're driving that it is narrower than it is, so that they don't go so fast. I've been on the other part of Myers Road a few times in the last year. I'm telling you that it scares me. People, it's like a superhighway down there. And I'm just like, whoa. And I was down there doing some site investigations for a planning commission application earlier in the year, and then I have some friends that live down there, and it just doesn't matter what day or time. It's just, whew. So I think you'll find that the planning commission would favor having the median with trees. The one thing I guess I would say is that you're talking about the buffer between the bike lane and the travel lane. I'm assuming you're just talking that it's just some stripes. Have you thought about adding into this plan, putting some of those little buttons?
The turtles.
It's certainly
So
a
that-
possibility.
Well, I'd like to see it added in, because if people, I hate to say it, but people move over there, and that's not, to me, that's not a buffer. That's just a striped line, and they just slide over. And if there was something they could hit that, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be over there, that would go a long way. I mean, you wouldn't have to do it on the intersections, obviously, but along the bike lane, that would give much more safety.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that ties in with the comment that I had, and it kind of jointly ties in with what Paul was talking about. My perspective is, I think creating that extra width with the 3-foot buffer gives the illusion that the road is much, much wider,
It does.
which tells me as a driver I can drive faster. And personally, I'd rather see that the 3-foot buffer reduced to 1 foot, and put those buttons on the road, so if I start to stray out of my lane, I'm going to feel it right away, and add a foot of that 3 feet onto the sidewalk, so that your cross section of the road is actually reduced by 2 feet in total width, but you get an extra foot of sidewalk on either side.
You got a comment?
And I was going to
You
actually,
need to come up to
Actually-
that.
Yeah, if you want to speak.
I was
you'll
actually
come
going
up
to
the
suggest that
microphone.
if there's some way we can
Here, Elizabeth.
narrow the lane width, not a whole lot, but I worked on the MLK Grand Viaduct, and it's only 11 feet wide.
Right.
And that's still wide, and the idea there was that we were going to get people to slow down to 30.
Yeah, I think that.
But it hasn't happened. Hasn't
that
happened.
wide cross section.
But it's
To
just
me,
like,
when you said you had determined that you were going to reduce the speed to 30 miles an hour, I'm thinking there's no way. If I'm driving that stretch, and that roadway is 60 feet wide,
I'm going 40.
I'm doing 40. Easy.
so if there's
Good
maybe
point.
some way to to squeeze an inch or two or a half a foot off of it a little bit, considering, of course, we're going to have trucks with the big wide mirrors. I get that. And again, my experience has been working on the viaduct, and that is
I-
part of McLaughlin. But the other thing that I
I
was
think if you kept the 12-foot lane but reduced that buffer down to just the width that's necessary for those buttons, that would reduce the.
Well, I was thinking you'd put the
road.
buttons on the other side of the 3 feet and give the. And I like your idea of adding more. The other thing I like is that I saw that on the map that it's not straight, which I totally like, but there's some curve in there. Not a big curve, but a gentle curve, because again, that will help slow people down. Allegedly.
Some people.
I know.
Some people.
Yeah, let's say it will slow some people down. Now, at 12 midnight, we're probably going to have some people racing through there like crazy people, but no,
So-
not you.
Denise, Elizabeth has some points she wants to make before she loses her train of thought on
Yeah,
on
okay.
the comment
So-
you just made.
I want to go back to Paul, because
Well,
I know Elizabeth, but I'm just going back and say I'm done with the cross-section comment, so.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm Elizabeth Marissa O'Hara. I recently worked on a project that had a number of bicycle facilities incorporated into it, and we engaged with the bicycle community extensively. And there was some real concern about adding the dots. The bicyclists felt that they oftentimes hit those and actually fall. I think that for the bicycle facility, that I would say that what we've heard from the bicycling communities, they prefer painted or something else, but the dots are a real concern for safety for them.
So,
Well, if you keep the 3-foot buffer and you put the dots over there, that's still plenty of room for the bicyclist to not be riding on them. My personal feeling is I wasn't suggesting that the width of the bicycle lane be squished up or that the width of the buffer be squished up. I want to see the buttons on the roadway side for the drivers, and that gives the bicyclists right there, they've got 9 feet that they can play with.
Which is crazy.
Thanks.
Yeah, but still, so I mean, I understand that. I've worked with BTA a lot. I still would like to see us put the buttons on, because I
You
know
like
how
buttons.
people drive here. I see them everywhere. They are not really good drivers. And I like Michael's comment that some people will be reasonable. The rest of them, if they're late for school or they got to get to here or there, they don't care.
Well, and that's the other element of it, is there's going to be a large proportion of brand new drivers using this road. Because you're going to have 16-year-olds going to the high school, and
it's our target audience when we were planning this. We had long conversations about the kid who just got his driver's license last summer and driving his first day
yesterday.
of school.
I'm
Yeah.
staying away from there, I'm telling you.
I do want to point out, because there seems to be a lot of discussion about the buffer strip. This is a first-time implementation in the city of Oregon City. So if you ever go out to Alden Sherwood Highway, that entire section of that road, which is almost 10 miles, utilizes this buffer strip. We did consider 3 feet as a planning point, but we could reduce that slightly to give us a little bit more in sidewalk. We think that's a reasonable accommodation. It was something that came up during planning, but we thought we'd start with 3 feet, but we can make adjustments.
As a long time bicycle rider before bike lanes were invented, I'm okay with a bike lane and no buffer. Seriously, I rode for years and years and years with this much shoulder on the side of the road. So 6 feet to me is extremely generous with no buffer.
well,
But I do think the buttons would serve a great purpose.
So-
And the reason for that
Mhm.
is because if it's just a painted line on the road, it's real easy to drive over that. But
Mhm.
the buttons tell the driver, I'm out of bounds. Get back in your lane.
So I've seen the buttons, RPMs, dots, whatever you want to call them. I've also seen rumble strips. I can tell you from a maintenance aspect, they make it much more difficult for us to maintain the road in a uniform pattern. It's something that when we get down from 50,000 feet and operations starts giving a lot more comments into the final design, we'll take it under advisement, but I've seen sections of road where the rumble strips, or not the rumble strips, where the RPMs cause problems in terms of long-term maintenance, and we want to be able to maintain whatever we design and construct.
What about a curb? A curb.
Oh, a separate individual curve?
A curb.
Mm,
A separation curb.
Yeah, we've not implemented that in the city before. I'm not familiar too much with that.
That has been done.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So give us some
other
reasons about what we
jurisdictions.
can do, instead of telling us that we can't do it.
I'm
and
not
it's-
saying you can't do
no,
anything.
No, I'm just saying, help us come up with something that will achieve what we're talking about and what could possibly work.
In
So
other
I can
parts
tell
of
you,
the
I
country, they
cycle
have-
about 3 days a week on 12th and Sherwood Highway. I live in Sherwood, so when I go for my Sunday morning rides, that's where I'm biking on. A 3-foot buffer is generous. The buffer over there on 12th and Sherwood is about 2 feet when you calculate the width of there's an 8-inch white stripe and then a 6-inch interior stripe. So those are all on center. So you get about 2 feet, and that's generous. But I can tell you, as a cyclist and for someone who cycles with my wife, who's not an avid cyclist, that little bit of extra,
Is
and
safe,
considering
yeah.
our target audience again,
Safety.
it's a real nice added feature. We wanted to showcase it in this as something that we could potentially look at for other larger transportation projects in the future.
You know, one thing you might consider looking
Mhm.
into is an extruded curb that's put on top of the pavement, and then you probably would reduce your maintenance issues with people running over it.
We have a brand new street sweeper, by the way.
Nice.
Well, we don't.
Charles,
It won't be delivered for another 4.5 months. So.
Well, it's coming.
Just-
So let me just clarify, because I know I should know it, but so you're talking about, so when I'm on my way to McMinnville, I go through Tualatin and then I take that,
Yeah.
that's
You-
Tualatin
You
Sherwood.
get off on Nyberg Road.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so 205
Fine,
Nyberg
yeah.
Road. All right. and
That's
you head-
Tualatin Sherwood, okay.
Yeah, you head eastbound or westbound,
Yeah.
and just as soon as you get past the railroad crossing,
Mhm.
then they start utilizing the buffer strip, and that buffer strip carries out all the way to Roy Rogers Road, and then
Okay.
Roy Rogers is, it's a landing strip. So
Yeah,
we
I
don't
think
need it up there.
I thought you were talking about the stuff that's not, it's before, through the industrial area, because whenever we're going there, there's a lot of cyclists, and to me
Yeah.
it seems a little narrow
But-
through the industrial area for the bicyclists.
Yeah, that's running all that the industrial area that you're passing through. That's the Sherwood Tualatin Industrial Park.
Yeah.
That buffer strip runs through the entire length of
Yeah,
it.
it just seems a little narrow to me, because there's usually several people cruising out there. And I stay over to the center, give them plenty of room.
Well, since we're on the cross-section.
Section, let's go.
First off, yeah, I think 3 feet buffer is, I mean, you're giving bicyclists 9 feet, you're giving pedestrians 5. And pedestrians generally have dogs and strollers and things that take up width. Not that bicyclists passing each other and all the other things that happen. So I'm okay with a 2-foot buffer and adding a foot onto the sidewalk. I also think you really need to look at trees in the bioswale, because for one thing you're looking at literally,
93 feet.
well, people using the bike lane and using the sidewalk are looking at 50 feet of no shade, because there's no requirement on the other side for there to be trees necessarily, especially if there's no development for a long time. And if you want this to be a multimodal way of people going back and forth to places, they're going to want shade while they're traversing.
Right.
You mean like over right
No,
there?
no,
Trees
like
here?
in the swale.
Oh, yeah, there are some trees that can
So-
grow in bioswales,
Yeah.
but not a lot.
Lisa's
not a lot of
pulling up
species.
our stormwater standards right now. We're not going to put it on this screen, but I can tell you for a fact there are trees and herbaceous. There's woody and herbaceous plants that are authorized in the bioswale configuration. What they are, off the top of my head, I can't tell you.
Sure.
But we can give you a few minutes here.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I mean, to me,
Yeah,
when
there's
we
lots
get
of
down into
factors.
the design,
Yeah,
when we
he's
get
just
into the
saying that,
design
take a look
standard,
at
that's
it.
fine, but I'm just saying you really, I mean,
Yeah,
as a
shade.
pedestrian, I don't want to walk,
On the hot asphalt.
well, or
Concrete-
the hot
concrete,
concrete or whatever.
yeah.
I mean, I did enough of that in Saudi Arabia. I'm done with the sun. I came back to
I have a
Oregon for
question.
clouds.
I have a question. Is there any major, I'm not familiar with this particular area, is there any major elevation between 213 and when it goes to Loder Road? I'm wondering about runoff water, and I'm beginning to think we'll never see rain in Portland again. But
Oregon City.
Oregon City, Portland, same thing,
No.
similar. we're same weather pattern. But I'm just wondering, is that a runoff that goes into those swales? I mean, I keep thinking if it turns, if it's down, it's going to fill one side more than the other, or couldn't tell by this if there was any major elevation.
So on the third page of
Yeah, I
this
was looking at that.
handout here, there's a profile. If you're,
And I was trying to read it, so
yeah, a little
He's
hard
talking
to
about
read
this
if you're not used to reading it. But
he's looking at
basically,
this page.
basically, we're providing like a low area,
Yeah.
about 100 feet to the east of OR 213 there, along.
What does that mean, a low area? Just
So a sag, so that we could have like a wetland area, or so the water will run away from the highway down Myers Road, and then from there it goes up on a kind of a significant hill. 5%.
It does go up.
It's this one.
Yeah.
This is the profile showing elevation. So it says existing ground.
That's for the swales. I
This
thought.
for the main.
You're
line.
looking at this one, right?
Right, the
Yeah,
main-
he's looking at this one.
And I'm
Main
looking
line
at
of
both
the
of them.
roadway.
So
Yeah,
is this the road or the
No.
Yeah,
the
so-
swale? Oh, no.
This one.
We're looking at this one.
It's this one.
It's this
Well, he pulled up that green one first, and
No,
that's
no,
what I
no.
was looking
It's
at.
the third page of the green one.
Okay.
This is the profile of the center line of the roadway.
Of the road, that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a problem, I just wanted to know if there was going to be a runoff.
It's fairly flat. It has to go up a hill there for a couple hundred feet to get
Okay.
kind of up, and then after that, it's
A couple hundred feet.
pretty
Yeah,
flat.
a little hill.
So then it's
A
those.
couple of hundred feet horizontal
So then it's
distance.
those little pocket areas that drain the water off
Rise
the.
is over a couple hundred feet.
So then it's the little pocket area like that diverts the water into the swales. I mean,
Yes.
like I see in
We're
most
going
of
to
our
be having some
newer
skiing there with
streets.
artificial
Yes.
snow.
Yep.
I'm only asking because that was a lot of cement there or blacktop, and I was wondering how that, if we see rain once again, how it would fill
yeah,
those swales.
I saw some
We're
on
assuming
the
we're going to
windshield
see
on
rain
Sunday.
again, so we have provided for it. In our,
Okay, thanks for that information.
Well, I'm in agreement with Damon. I think
Yeah,
we
shade
need
would be-
to have some trees along that roadway, even if they have to be outside of the swale, or the swale has to be adjusted to make that possible. And I'm waiting to hear Denise suggest that we might transplant some of the trees that are being removed by the roadway into those areas.
Oh, you
No,
know me too.
we just go
you
around
know me
them.
too
We
well.
just leave them in place and go around them.
But I do think that it would be a sad outcome to have this length of a roadway basically not be essentially a tree-lined roadway when we're done.
I think we have lots of good examples of other industrial roadways that go through areas where there's, like Rivergate has got a lot of trees on it, and it's, you meander through there, but you still get the trucks through, and, there's a number of people and bicycles.
is 6 feet for bikers.
Well, the bikes are getting bigger and wider.
I got a small.
So
It's not the bike.
on the
it's people
screen
on the
for
bike.
you, I've got the this
Ooh,
is
that's tiny.
the stormwater grading manual, the new stormwater grading and design manual. And just to give you a representative of what we are considering or what we would anticipate in terms of that stormwater facility. So it's something in line with these rain gardens and stormwater planters. That 10-foot width really is a placeholder for something of this type. You can have it lined and curved, or you can have it just gradually flowing over the edges so it's not so defined. And you can have different planting species in here, including some woody species, as well as herbaceous plants. So we can try and achieve that. There's actually a planting. Here's actually a perfect example of what we're looking at. This is with the curb type right here, and then the planter strip and the sidewalk directly adjacent to it. And you see they've been able to get some herbaceous and plant woody species in here.
About how wide is that bike?
That looks, if you consider the concrete, looks about a 6 foot.
Does to
6
me
feet.
too, because that bicycle symbol is about 5 feet wide.
And
when
no,
you stencil it
no
in
buffer
there.
strip
So-
there.
One other consideration with the dots is that we heard quite loudly from some folks was the fear that if there's something in the bike lane, which often happens, some debris, that they have to pull out, and they were concerned about rumble strips in particular and dots because bicyclists are likely to go down.
The
if
outer
there's a-
2 or 1 foot foot is the only usable portion of the bike lane that's right next to the stripe, if not on the stripe. The rest of it is glass and road debris and all kinds of stuff.
That's a lot of times the
that
case. So
mess your
that
tires
was
up.
why they
Yeah.
were so concerned about the rumble strips or the dots, is oftentimes they're avoiding.
Okay, well, again, we'd like you to come up with something that takes care of our consideration. We will be happy to consider whatever, but you heard what we said, and that's, you know.
Yeah, I mean, rumble
well by
strips have the advantage of being able to drive the street
street
sweeper,
sweeper over 'em.
you know, and clean the bike lane too. And I think that's sufficient to,
Let the
for
drivers
most
know.
people know that they're drifting. The ones that are speeding are going to drive across a rumble strip no matter what, because
Right.
they're cutting corners and they're
Yeah.
doing all the stupid things that they're not supposed to do. Oh well, that's what the police are for.
I've heard that.
There are types of stripes that just have the little quarter-inch
Mm-hmm.
bumps, and that might be a good solution for something like this.
Oh, you got
Lets the
more
drivers
questions?
know.
Yeah, there's something that they have right near Milwaukee High School that's on the street. I can't think of what the name of it is, but it's where the light rail line crosses, and it's in the pavement, and you drive over it, and it's like these little tiny lines, but they're maybe about that tall, and you drive over them, and it's like da-da-da-da, but it's not. But I don't know what they are. I've
They're-
never seen them anywhere else.
They're rumble strips. They actually have.
But they're vertical.
Yeah. But what they do on the roller, they actually have notches, so when the roller goes over it, it leaves them up.
Ah, well, I like that. I think that's a cool
Um,
idea.
You got any more questions, Paul? Because I got a bazillion.
No, I think
A bazillion.
Yeah, that's
I'm
more
done.
than 3 and less than 7.
Yeah.
I have my big question is this section, right by the high school.
That's the
Is it?
the two.
or-
You're holding
or,
up
I mean, by
213 and
by the college.
College, you mean
Yes.
college.
Is the road gonna notch through the hill, or is it gonna rise up and dive right down into the intersection? Because that's like a 10.
It notches through the hill.
Okay,
So,
so
yeah.
there's gonna be a hill on each side of the road, or are we gonna level it?
There's a hill on each side the way
Okay.
they currently have.
Narrowing effect.
Mm-hmm.
Make people think it's smaller.
Well, if nothing else, it's another place to put a banner and advertising.
There you
Um,
go.
The
Legacy project.
the culvert that's being proposed, is it gonna? I guess my question is, I know we're not supposed to use culverts. Evil fish die in them, and beavers dam them up, and water backs up. Are they going to be? Is it going to be kind of like an open culvert, and that like where the median is, there's going to be a gap, or is it just going to be an 8-foot tunnel underneath the road, or do we know yet? Or
That's a good question, and we've just kind of took a quick look at it. We don't know what it's going to be yet. Tried to oversize it a bit so that maybe stream bed material could be placed in the bottom, or like you say, it could be a bottomless culvert, which is just an arch. So we
it's
haven't
basically
done
a
enough
bridge.
analysis to a bridge. We
Is
haven't
there
done
another
enough analysis
structure that you could use instead of a culvert?
Yeah, you can. I mean, like the bottomless culverts, they call them, the arches, is one way to provide the natural stream bottom. They're a little bit higher priced than probably just a regular old 4x4 box culvert is. I'm an old engineer, so we put a lot of culverts in. It's the cheap, easy way to do things, and
that's fine.
Could we not go for the cheap and easy?
Well, it's how much money we can put together. In the
Well, I know,
project,
but again,
yeah.
Yeah.
Paying for it.
I go back. Yeah, I'll write the check. I go back to the whole idea that there was a reconnaissance done, and I'm assuming that a reconnaissance is somebody just wandered through, but they didn't do the full-on blown analysis that needs to be done. Again, as I said at the beginning, I'd really like to see this be a holistic type project where we really look at making this some sort of really awesome demonstration project. And I really want to. I made another number of notes here. It's that additional detailed studies may be needed for potential design constraints such as hazardous material, archaeological resources, which I didn't see that in there, but. And then you talk about environmental conditions. So maybe all of the the NOD areas that this goes through are not the most pristine, but it seems like we have an opportunity with some stormwater runoff that there could be, again, some restoration of this so that it functions the way it used to before people started planting, tree farms or they dug it up or whatever, because I'm assuming at some point in time there was water going through there. I mean, I understand we're in a sort of a dry period right now, but Caulfield Creek did extend further than what was observed, I'm assuming. And in April, we had a dry winter. It was pretty dry around here. So I guess I just want to add that in to say we have a real opportunity to not just go in and start putting everything in a culvert, but if we use something like you're suggesting, a bottomless culvert where you have a stream and something can go through. I was just looking here for the rest of my notes. It talks about potential small wetlands and recon wetlands within a larger area of upland non-native pasture, scrubland habitat of low quality. So how could we make some of that some higher quality? Can it be improved? And we do obviously have a couple of Oregon ash and red alder forested areas. Plus, you talked about in the report there's an oak savanna somewhere in there, or an oak where there's a lot of oak trees, oak woodland, and that needs to be really, really looked at so that we can, those are going away really quickly.
Especially because the road goes right through the middle of it.
Yeah, and then is there something that can be written into this that the tree removal on this be really minimized to the greatest extent possible, not taking stuff out if we don't have to take it out? Because, when I add up this cross section, I guess simple math, I'm saying 93 feet wide.
Right.
Wow, that is.
Which is,
Why?
in my opinion, a good reason to reduce that buffer strip from 3 feet.
That is pretty wide.
And just a thought to bounce off of what you were talking about, the culvert. Obviously, we're a long ways from the final engineering on this, but if dollars become an issue, which I'm sure it will, I would rather see the culvert put in there and then money put toward the trees, to tree line the road. I think the overall benefit of having that entire road tree lined would be worth the value of having a concrete
And-
culvert.
and I-
Just to let you know, 1749, which is our natural resource overlay district, where the right-of-way or private road crosses a stream, the crossing shall be by bridge or a bottomless culvert.
Okay.
Bottomless culvert.
Very cool.
They have two options.
Yeah, and
Because
I
we
would
can
say
conceivably have fish coming up
on the-
through there.
on the trees and the swale side, definitely on the south side, because that's where our parking strip is. So, that means
Hot
cars
cars.
will not boil up. And, John, when you did the traffic analysis and everything, I didn't catch, and I apologize if you said it, but did you take into account the effect of the Beaver Creek Industrial Zone campusy stuff developing, and the fact that we already have large existing residential down in Gaffney and Caulfield area, so people would work on Loader Road and the golf course, and then transit Myers Road to get to their house on Gaffney Lane, and down in those areas.
Yes, I did do an assignment of traffic that tried to account for that. And of course, the transportation system plan is based upon that whole theory of the multinodal development, as well as multimodal access that helps to reduce the per capita vehicle miles of travel. So yes, I think that's all accounted for.
Okay, because
And there is a substantial amount of the traffic predicted on Myers Road that would be traversing it for say the industrial development or the Beaver Creek to the Gaffney areas and vice versa. So yes, I'm pretty confident that we accounted for all of that.
because I could easily see the truck traffic going up and down Myers and the residential traffic taking Glen Oak, because right across the street from Glen Oak is 5 developments.
Wouldn't that be nice
And,
if people worked where they lived?
Yeah, there's a theory about that.
Yeah, I hear that.
And the other thing I guess I would say is, we really need to look at what sort of signalization goes into Myers, because as you mentioned, the traffic that backs up on Glen Oak, of kids and buses and everybody leaving the school, I know I've done it, and I see several dozen other people. We avoid Glen Oak by going all the way up to Henrici and coming around, because we just ignore the traffic jam that backs up all the way up almost to High School Avenue, and because the signal at Glen Oak is,
Sucks.
well, I mean, it's set for people to go down the highway, not for people to pull out onto the highway. So,
There is a different philosophy on the function of roadways
Yes.
between what the state does and what we might prefer.
yeah.
If you're trying to get out from Caulfield Road onto the highway, it's an extreme test of patience.
I usually sit there and sing along
So-
with the radio because I have a friend that lives on Caulfield.
So when we started this project, we had a big roundtable meeting, and we went around the table, and Elizabeth asked everybody, you know, what's your key goal getting from this project? And I went around about 12 people, and then they came to me and they go, I want to stop getting the phone calls about Glen Oak and 213. Is take the demand off of Glen Oak Road and that particular intersection. This project achieves that.
But does it just change it to calls about Myers and 213?
You know, if you take the demand off of Glen Oak, we think we'll be able to relieve the congestion here and then give us a little wiggle room to try and engineer a permanent solution for Glen Oak and Myers,
Yeah.
or Glen Oak and 213.
These are regular people that you said are getting these calls, or you're saying
No, these are
professionals?
calls. No, these are calls that I get.
Oh, you're getting okay.
It is, it is,
that
and
wasn't-
I told them this at this meeting.
Yeah.
It is the single most.
Oh,
and
okay,
Lisa can
okay.
tell you, the single most prevalent phone call that I get about signalization in the entire city.
You don't
And I
get-
can tell you from meeting with ODOT personally, we've squeezed every ounce of juice that we can get out of this lemon.
Okay, well, I'll start calling about
Thank you.
7th and Main.
Yes, so will I.
So you had a bazillion questions?
That answered. I said it was between 3 and 7. That's what a bazillion is. So
So you-
I got 4, and I'm
So you
good.
want us to go down the line and say what we want to get out of this project?
No.
Is that what you're asking us?
I don't think we need to go through that exercise.
I have a concern that I haven't heard anybody talk about, the connection between the Myers Road extension and South Douglas to the college. And my concern is that I can anticipate a lot of people going to the college to use this as a shortcut to avoid the intersection at 213 entering into the college down there. And I could see that section of Myers Road potentially being really congested between the Douglas connection and Highway 213.
Charles, I looked extensively at the information that we had from various recent development plans in south part of the city and the Clackamas Community College Master Plan. And I did the analysis based upon what's out there today and what has been proposed. And there's actually relatively little traffic that occurs from student or staff origins to the south of Myers Road. I mean, most of it is coming from the north and from the west. So I did a reassignment of traffic. I mean, for example, looking at the intersection of Malala Community College and 213, and I looked at the number of left turns leaving that site at 5 p.m. And I said, those are the candidates who would be reassigned to use this new connection from Douglas Loop down to Myers Road. So I assigned them to that. I did the same thing on the east side of campus with the signalized access at, I guess it's Claremont access. I looked at the right turning traffic that occurred there in the afternoon. I did the same thing with the morning traffic.
This was you
Looked
physically
at the
observed this?
inbound. No, I looked at the volumes that we had from traffic counts,
Just the numbers.
just the numbers. And I said, those are the candidates to be reassigned to this new connection to the south. So I'm pretty confident if the community college population ends up being similar to what is out there today, it's not going to be, it will be an important reliever, but it is not going to be overwhelmed because of the traffic patterns that exist. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the question, and I looked at it, and I'm pleased to be able to tell you what the analysis was that and the methodology that I had in terms of reassigning that traffic.
Just see it.
Well, and my experience with the community colleges is it's basically steady traffic all day because you get 50 kids going to 7 o'clock classes, 50 kids going to 8 o'clock classes, 9 o'clock, and so it's a steady. People are always turning in and turning out of community college, but it's 5-6 cars at a time. So
The speeds
I
of the
mean, I could
college are
see
slow.
the concern too that potentially you'd end up turning off of 213 onto the Myers extension and run right into all the traffic backed up waiting to turn on that little merge. But that looks like a fairly long run out, and so I think the thing we want to be able to do is look at the potential to maybe put a turn lane rather than just people stop, because we want to make sure that the median pullout, I guess, is long enough.
Median
That's
pullout clearly needs to be long enough. I guess I would also just comment that the transportation system plan was developed by focusing on the PM peak hour. And because of the importance of the activities at the high school, the activities at the community college, I also developed a morning peak hour and analyzed it for those conditions, which is part of what led to the conclusion and the recommendation that we needed that additional northbound lane on Highway 213.
The other question I had is, what do you see as the impact on traffic on Myers Road between High School Road and Beaver Creek Road?
the additional throughput that's gonna.
Relatively little. We do have there's certainly a very important component in terms of Damon asked about the Beaver Creek development area, and yes, we will have some definite flow-through of traffic on that. Right now, the characteristics of that are very peaky in terms of the matching with the school periods, and we did not spend very much time looking at the connections on Beaver Creek Road because they already exist, they're already signalized, so we did focus on the portion to the west of the high school. There will definitely be some increase, but a lot of that increase is going to have to do with the development of the Beaver Creek concept plan area, rather so much than than this connection of this gap in Myers Road. But we will see a substantial increase with a much more balanced approach in terms of the volumes. Another thing to comment on that I kind of skipped over in my earlier presentation is that this is the campus industrial area. And as you're certainly aware from your experience, the flow of traffic in an industrial area is opposite during time of day to residential development. Residential is departing in the morning, returning home at night. With the industrial area, it's a jobs location, so it's traffic that flows into it in the morning and away from it in the afternoon. So it does kind of balance out. So we do have the combination of residential in the area, the high school, community college, and the industrial all kind of blend together.
Other questions?
I was just curious about why we're recommending removing the concrete median on this sheet, the one that shows on 213 there.
That is to provide for the left turn lane onto Myers Road.
Oh, okay. Is it going to be that? Is it the turn lane going to be that is going to be fairly long queuing.
It's fairly long, yeah. It's, I believe, 600 feet long. It's pretty
It's,
long.
I mean, part of it is to provide the transition as traffic southbound needs to move over and provide enough deceleration distance and the queue storage distance for the intersection itself. In part, I told you I overestimated the amount of industrial development, so it's possible that the storage distance and taper would not have to be as long. Again, kind of the worst case analysis, and that can be dealt with in more detail when somebody gets into the design stage for this project.
Well, I'll tell you
I like it
the
very
queuing
much.
distance from 213 onto Molalla backs up onto 213, so it may be prudent to remove it to extend that as much as it is to get our turn lane. I mean, just the way the road usage is. And that's in the middle of the day sometimes.
Yep.
I actually like it there now. It makes it a little safer.
I think also the additional through lane would maybe help with some of the backup. I mean, at least give people an option to change lanes rather than backing up onto one lane.
Well, the backup in the afternoon southbound on 213 backs up from where 213 narrows to one lane in either direction, and the backup actually continues past Molalla Avenue, and sometimes significantly past Molalla Avenue.
Unfortunately, we're not addressing that with
Right.
this.
One other question I had that maybe I missed. You've talked about a realignment of the Loader Road connection, but is that part of this project, or is that going to be a separate project later?
I think it's just an acknowledgement.
Separate project later.
So we haven't looked at that in any great detail.
It looked like it went through a
Other
whole
than-
lot of wetlands.
Yeah.
It looked an NOD area, not wetlands, but
Yeah, the initial
Yeah.
layout definitely was
One
problematic.
of the things we had to try and do, because the TSP called for Loader Road connecting into the Myers Road extension, was to try and figure out where was it going to land. In the land use process was already the application for the school district facility.
Mhm.
We were part of the planning team, and as part of the final project with the school district. So as part of the final project with the school district, we were able to work with them to have them dedicate that portion of right-of-way so we could at least take that variable off the table. I agree with you, when you overlay that alignment and you have the NROD displayed in there, there's a lot of environmental issues that need to be addressed. What was called for in the TSB basically had Loader Road going through that entire diagonal, NROD alignment, just basically cleaving it, laterally. So, is it impactful in terms of the environment? Yes, it's better than what was on paper previously, and again, it's more of a concept level.
Any other questions at this time?
No, we're adjourned.
I'm just trying to figure out how we can get some more, because you want us to review this at our next planning commission meeting, and I think there's still some of those. There's still some substantial environmental questions that we don't know the answer to,
That's right.
and I don't know if we know them now. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out: do we need to run down with them, or you've got all of our concerns listed down that we've gone through this evening?
I think we can rely on the
Yeah.
staff to review this in light of the natural resources codes and all that too, right?
So we do have a presentation on Wednesday evening to the NRC. I can tell you, one of the documents that you have has an outline of the environmental areas that we were able to verify were on site. They're not full-blown delineations.
No,
They're
no,
not
I know that.
404D delineations, but trained biologist was out there. This is actually my background. I've been out there, and we're able to confirm the environmental assets that were there. So this is it doesn't have a page number. It's page 24.
It's the one I didn't print out.
So, one of the things that we did with this was to, it was a big planning effort for us for minimization and avoidance, which is one of the primary criteria for environmental impacts. The alignment that we went through, deliberately avoided as many of the verified environmental areas out there. There's a small wetland to the immediate north of. As soon as Lisa gets it up here, sheet 20. Keep going.
That was it. Isn't it that?
This one.
It's the baseline condition report, and it says it's sheet 24 of that. It's the environmental
It
section.
is.
Yeah. So the alignment tries to minimize that. See that little pink wetland right there on the center of the page?
Mm-hmm.
Avoids that deliberately. Turns with some safe radiuses so that we can come up and only have to cleave that brown area is a really nice oak stand. And the decision there was you cut it in half and you create a little pocket remnant, which eventually dies of
Exactly.
its own volition, or we cleave one side of it and leave that habitat as intact as possible. So I met with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, and I've talked to members of the NRC, and they all appreciated all of those efforts in terms of the alignment and trying to minimize the environmental impacts. The culvert that's depicted here, it really is just representative of the fact that we acknowledge there's some environmental issues out here. We haven't fully defined them. And it's not something that the field reconnaissance that we've noted so far has been able to substantially support that this is, a fish-bearing stream. I've been out there. I can tell you it is not a fish-bearing stream.
Not now.
Not now.
But maybe it was. Who knows?
When Lewis and Clark were here, it may have been, but today it isn't. In terms of any sort of aquatic habitat that's out there, you'll see at the bottom left-hand, about the bottom third of that page, that's what Caulfield Creek is essentially running through right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's moving north to south in almost a crescent moon, crossing underneath 213 and then coming out over to Moore's Pond on the west side of the road. And there is some aquatic, some useful aquatic habitat in there, some salmonids and some other, some steelheads that are actually living and thriving in that area. So Doug Neely and I had a really nice conversation about that the other day, and he made some points in regards to
So
that.
you're making me feel a little bit old because
Mhm.
probably 25 years ago I was on Mr. Saunders' property when we were talking about designating campus industrial. So it's
Okay.
nice to see you, Mr. Saunders. It's been a long time.
So, we have made some strong efforts in trying to confine the scope of this so it doesn't become unwieldy. We did invest some time and some effort at the onset. This wasn't hindsight, to try and address a lot of the questions that you're bringing up right now. What we're bringing to you this evening, we believe, is the best representation of trying to account for property owners' rights, the interest of the public, safety, and the environment. That's all I have.
That would have been so nice if that had been summarized in a report.
Actually,
Your report.
so
Analysis.
it's in the alternatives analysis.
Yeah.
So that's a final report, which I believe you guys have it in this
Yep.
document. Yeah.
We have a draft, and we were waiting to finalize it to get input.
It's the one that I didn't get to finish reading.
Yeah.
I was concentrating on the main report.
But yeah, we had
So ask
some.
Mr. Saunders if he wants to say anything.
Mr. Saunders, are you interested in speaking this evening? If you do, you'll have to come
could you
up.
come up to
up.
the podium, please? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John.
My name is Ronald Saunders, and I came here tonight to just be available to answer any questions you might have. I have approximately 23 acres here, and I'm probably the largest private property owner here, and I purchased the property as an investment, a long-term investment. I have no particular plans to develop it right now, but I'd like to see it be something that is going to benefit the city regarding different forms of transportation. How it was viewed 10 years ago is much different today. You spend a lot more time analyzing all the different components. And so I have nothing further to say, but I'm more than happy to take questions if you have them.
I guess the only real question I have is, did you feel that your questions and concerns were addressed by the staff? I mean,
Yes.
got what you wanted, but they were at least paid attention to what you, because
Yes.
your section's just, your property just cut right in two, so.
Yes, the one concern I had was a couple of years ago when Myers Road was being extended past the Future Park property. There was a change in the alignment. When I purchased the property in 2005, an engineer, Nancy, is it Crashauer? She said that the alignment would be more straight, and somehow that changed. And with the Myers Road alignment, you've got these kind of nice turns, but when you get near the park, you get a real jog. And to me, that didn't look like that was the greatest planning.
Yeah.
And that was probably the only thing I saw in the future Myers Road where if it was straightened out more, it would be a more efficient use of, people could go down that road at 30 miles an hour and they're not worried about making these turns. Are you familiar with the area I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's probably the only issue I've raised in the last 2 years regarding the road.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Weeks of fun.
So, Tony, do we have
Any hard copies of documents would be greatly appreciated.
Yes.
No, for the meeting coming up in 2 weeks.
Okay. You want hard copies of the full reports, or are you talking of the display items?
Well, you're just saying that these are drafts, so I'm assuming something's going to happen between now and then?
So the display items,
No, this is fine.
yeah, we'll be revising a few of these based on some of the comments that we got this evening. In terms of the reports, outside of a few of the exhibits in here, these are essentially prepared to be finalized. We'll make some changes in here, but we don't anticipate full revisions on any of these documents.
Okay, I'll come down and see you and get a copy.
Okay.
Thank you. Tony, do we have any communications?
2 weeks from tonight, we have this legislative action as well as 2 zone changes. So that's all that I have.
Great.
There's going to be
It's not even 9 yet.
that event that's going to happen that Randy Gregg's putting on from the U of O. I forget when that is. I was just going to try to look it up on my calendar real quick. We'll talk about the Willamette Falls Legacy Project.
You guys want to step outside?
It's not, is it September? I kept thinking it's coming up, but anyway. Let's see.
September's only a few weeks away.
I know it is. Let's see. Is it on? No, I think it's the 9th.
Okay.
Yes, conversation about Rediscover the Falls, 6 p.m., Portland Art Museum, September 9th. Be
All right.
there or be
I
square.
think we're adjourned.
Yeah.